Peace is not something we chase, it is something we allow, the natural state beneath all our striving. It is found in the tender act of accepting ourselves as we are, in the courage to release what we cannot control, and the gentle rhythm of rest, breath, and stillness. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Human Weave, Season 3 Faces of Peace. In this season, we are exploring the many ways peace reveals itself within us, between us, and around us. In today's episode, Anchoring in Inner Peace, we turn inward to explore what it really means to live in harmony with ourselves. How do we quiet the restless chatter of the mind and make peace with our past and the choices we have made? How can practices like mindfulness, self awareness, and emotional regulation help us return to calm even when life feels messy or uncertain? And importantly, how do we tell the difference between genuine inner peace and the pressure to put on a mask of toxic positivity? To guide us in this conversation, I'm joined by Anisha Maheswari, a psychologist, mindfulness meditation teacher, and aligned life coach. She supports women who feel stuck in unfulfilling lives to reconnect with a life that feels authentic and joyful. Through her signature path framework, shaped by her own journey, she offers a simple yet transformative process for lasting change. Her personal quest to find inner peace took her through psychology, therapy, spirituality, and years of inner work, transforming her from seeker to guide. Today, she shares her wisdom as an insight timer meditation teacher, guiding listeners worldwide for nearly 3 years, and as a coach working with women ready to embrace true calm and alignment. We are honored to have her with us today to reflect on this very meaningful inner journey of peace. A warm welcome to you, Anisha.
Thank you, Roshni, for this beautiful introduction, not just of who I am, what I do, but also of your thoughts regarding that inner peace. I love that introduction,
Oof.
how it is not about striving and it is about arriving. Yeah.
Yeah. Anisha, we often say that peace begins from within, right? Let's start with your own journey. What was the turning point when you realized inner peace was possible even amidst struggle?
So, peace, when you asked me to do this, I really resonated with that word because that word, peace, has been kind of the theme that I was chasing for so long. That's why I really related with that introduction. Because so my journey kind of started when I was in college in my graduation. I moved out from my home, and mostly when we start college, it's kind of a time for freedom, independence, exploration. But for me, it was like a downward spiral that started from that moment. It was when I was in the lowest moment of my time. And since you mentioned that you work with teenagers, you might relate to the inner struggle that they go through. So I was introduced with people who are my age, but so different from me. They felt like so confident, and I felt anxious. And when we think about anxiety, usually the opposite of it that comes to people's mind is calm or peace. Because, yeah, there is all this restlessness and stuff when we are feeling anxiety. And that's what I thought I needed. The most important thing in my life became peace. There was one time when I was doing an internship under a counseling psychologist, and as an intern, we were receiving kind of like a small workshop, and that trainer asked all of us, other trainees as well, that what is most important to you? And everyone, responded that I love my parents, I love nature. My best friend was like kind of very smart. She was like, okay, what this person really wants to hear. So she went with, I love myself, which was the correct answer that the trainer was also trying to get. But the thing that came to my mind was peace. It really was. And that's why it just surprises me that you brought this topic to me. That maybe I was supposed to go through that journey and then from a seeker to a guide to share my experience from that. So that's why I say that that was the theme of my life. And I tried to explore a number of books. I tried to find the answers in psychology. I try to explore spirituality, all of these different stuff that people explore when they're trying to work on themselves. And it was a messy journey. Um, but the point that turned everything, I was reading a book. I have read about mindfulness and I have read mindfulness books in the past as well. But when I was reading this particular book, Peace is Every Step. And the book was by Thich Nhat Hanh. So he's a monk. He's very popular. So when I was reading that book, it suddenly hit me. So let me mention the thought that used to go in my head, which was that since I'm an anxious person, since I am not normal, I would not be able to live a life, live that adult life, have deal with all those adult responsibilities like other people do. I'm also, I'm right now having goosebumps when I'm remembering that time of my life. And it was a really hard time. So I was kind of like hopeless. That was the emotion, that was the feeling that stayed with that thought within me, that I'm not enough, I'm not normal in some way, and I would never be that way. I would never be normal. I would never have a calm and peaceful life. So, coming back to the book, the transformational moment, I realized that the peace that I was seeking, it wasn't if I let go of that anxiety, it wasn't in securing a good job, it wasn't in all of those different things, it wasn't in changing the environment. All of these things help, but the thing that clicked with me was that it was right here. I experienced that peace despite having anxiety. So when those two things coexisted, it was like it was always here. I never realized that. I kept running after it. I tried to, you know, cultivate it in some way within me. And it wasn't it wasn't somewhere out there. It's a cliche, but I experienced that. And that's why I believe I went into spirituality. I, learned about all those conceptual things that we are one and all of those things. But the moment when you experience that, when that conceptual knowledge becomes the experiential, knowledge or that experience, then your world changes. Then you really, really understand or more so embody or live that. So that was a moment of freedom. That moment bring me hope. At that moment, the thought that came to my mind was, if I'm not able to do anything in my life, if I am not able to, have that success that society calls, have that good job, have a good partner, have a good home, stuff like that. Even if nothing happens, even if I turn a beggar someday, I went into that worst case scenario and I was like, even if that happens, I would still have a way to access peace. And that brought freedom. And from there, my journey started.
Wow.
Yes, that is my story.
That's such a powerful thing that you just shared. Uh, and I want to pick on this word you used in the end, that when you found access to that peace is when you found freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere we're all looking for that. The way you said about peace was such an important word. I think for me, the word was always freedom. I didn't know what I wanted freedom from, but I felt like everything I'm doing, any job I do, any relationship I'm getting into, the want or the desire is to have freedom. It's a very important point you brought in there, that Conceptually understanding something is one thing, but for you to experience it, and that is the life changing moment. That's a very beautiful point. And here I want to say that many of us equate peace with silence or absence of problems. But you did bring this deeper concept where even if the worst case scenario was there, I can access that peace. Would you like to talk a bit more about that?
Okay. So that is something that I've never shared with anyone, not even my friend. I've never shared this like in this detail with anyone. So maybe it was time to come out in this way with you. Two things are coming to my mind. One thing is to help you understand how you can access peace while having anxious thoughts, while having that feeling, the difficult feelings and stuff like that. And the other thing, that peace is not in silence. So, a practice, a very little practice is coming to my mind
Sure.
right now. If you are willing, we can do a very,
Of
very
course.
short practice. So, it is going to be like a 1 or 2 minute practice. And you can do so while you are listening, while like the listeners are doing anything. Maybe except if you are driving a car or something. If you are like operating any heavy machinery, then you might need your full focus. But otherwise, feel free to follow along, and you can do it with me as well, Roshni.
Yeah, would love to.
So without changing anything about this moment, just bring your attention to the sounds around you. Become aware of the sounds in your room or wherever else that you are located. You might hear the sound of your fan, your AC. You might hear people talking. And now let your awareness expand to notice the sounds in some distance. So it might be the sound of a traffic horn or chirping of the birds. For the next minute, just be open to the sounds around you. You don't need to label them, simply notice what does that sound feels like. So you can notice the loudness, the pitch, the length of that sound. You don't need to force to find a sound. Simply be open and let those sounds arrive. And if there is a lot of silence, then perhaps bring your focus to your breath, the sound of your breath. Again, you don't need to breathe faster or longer to hear anything. Just be open and see if you notice the faintest sound of your breath. And now Whenever you feel ready, you can take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, letting go of this practice and returning back. So, in this practice, we didn't try to silence anything because usually people are like, I have all this noise and I cannot meditate or I cannot feel the peace. But the sound itself can be the source of peace. If you just tune and see how you're feeling right now, you might notice it is somewhat different, or your inner world is a little bit settled than we began.
Yes. Yes. I'm also in a physically silent space. So the voices around me were so light, and it was amazing that I could hear my heartbeat so clearly at one point. It just became more and more louder, and the more I focused on it, and it was a beautiful thing to actually notice. This is something I do with my kids. The sound observation is something I do with my kids very often, but it was very powerful doing it with you, Anisha, I must say. It's also the voice you carry. I think it was wonderful for me to experience my own heartbeat that closely. Thank you so much for that.
I am glad that you were able to experience what you teach your kids at a different level to connect with the very faintest sound because people are not able to hear that. So, yeah, so that was, my point. And like you can access it without the silence. The silence is not a prerequisite. So we have, just like this one, we have placed a lot of conditions for if I have this or if I do not have this, then only I can be happy. If, I do not have, if I have the complete silence, then only I can be peaceful. But those conditions are just mind made or by the society. When you actually put your toes in that water, you will experience that those conditions fall apart and they are not a prerequisite. It's, I don't know, somehow it just, those conditions got placed and now you are running and chasing and striving to achieve them or get rid of something. Yeah.
Again, a very powerful point, because I want to bring in here another misconception. There are so many attached to the word peace. I feel very often people think, and so much more in some spiritual contexts also, people think that peace means being emotionless or very passive, very detached, to everything. How would you redefine what inner peace really looks like in this context?
Okay, so there is a difference between detachment, the phrase that got popularized, and it basically means being indifferent or being like a robot where you don't feel anything. And I understand that when you're going through a hard time, you are like, I just want to get rid of all of it. I do not want to feel anything anymore. And I get it. And I understand the obsession with detachment. But that is something that I would not recommend seeking, either from the point of view of being a psychologist or from the point of view of being a mindfulness teacher or spirituality, because that is not the goal. Why I am advising against it is because if you would like to, live a deeply fulfilling life, a life that is rich, vibrant, a life that you love, a life where you feel alive, not just you're getting by, not just you're surviving it, but you're feeling alive, then this detachment is not the pathway for you. And I never say that this is completely wrong because it is always subjective. So that's why I clarified that on the basis of what is your goal, then this is not the way to go. Detachment is not the way to go. And it is a very, very common myth. So it's like you have one door And if you want to close that door of your heart at the face of negative emotions, so you don't feel the negative emotion, then there is no other door for the positive emotions. So if you close the door at the face of negative emotions, if you don't want to let those in, you will also not be able to let the positive ones in.
Yeah.
And you would not feel that joy, you would not feel that happiness, all the different emotions, love, beauty, awe, wonder, the kind of feeling that you have when you witness sunset.
Yeah.
So you would not be able to experience that to that richness. And I have witnessed this in myself and most importantly in my clients, when I ask them that when was the last time that you really felt, joy or happiness, they were like, I didn't, it has been a long time. And it was also not to that intensity. So if your goal is experiencing life and feeling alive and all of that, which is possible for you no matter whatever emotional state you are in.
Yeah.
Because I remember a time when I was like, I do not want to get out of my bed. I was feeling like a burden and all of those difficult emotion. I was feeling that. And from there, I'm here. Of course, not all the emotions have gone away. Not all the negative stuff has gone away, and that I never feel sad or anxious. It is not the case. I do. But I also feel happy. So that is still a possibility no matter where you are. So detachment is not the way to go. Now, what was that exact thing that got so, messed up and all these myths around it got formed and it turned into detachment? It is non attachment. Okay. So, non attachment is different basically in mindfulness or spirituality as well. Attachment is of two types. First is if you are clinging to a pleasure, like you want to feel good and you are like, I want more of this, I want to do more shopping, I want to do, I want to have this. So, clinging to what you want to feel, clinging to pleasurable experience. The second aspect of it is trying to avoid the negative experience, which might be really related to this whole thing. So, that other aspect is I don't want this. And you might think, why use the word attachment for this? It's because it is dominating your mind. Your life is getting woven around it. That I do not want to feel anxious, for example, if that is the emotion you're trying to avoid, which I was. So I will not go into this situation. I will not meet these people. I will not go into these circumstances. I will not take this opportunity because it will make me feel anxious.
Mm.
So your whole life get very limited because of it. And the attachment because your mind, your life is revolves around it. So these are the two ways in which people get attached. That is the cause of all suffering, if we were to speak in Buddha's term, that clinging to pleasure and avoiding pain. This is the basic instinct that we have, and this is what causes the suffering, right?
Yeah.
So, non attachment, what that is. So, if it is not about closing the door completely, then the way how we can become non attached so that we can experience that peace also is that just like we notice the sounds, right? Just like we become aware of them. Similarly, we can become aware of our internal world. So it can be our thought. I am not good enough. I'm not a normal person. There is something wrong with me. I'm a burden. Whatever thought you're having, become aware. We can become aware of our thoughts. We can become aware of our emotions. So rather than I am feeling anxious, it becomes I am noticing anxiety within me.
Mm.
There is a different, maybe you might experience it by saying or not, but there is a different experience to it when you are like the witness of it rather than in it. So, a metaphor that I use with my clients is that I use the example of a movie. So, when you are in the movie theater, so when you are watching a movie, you're sitting there and there is nice stuff happening, the whole story is unfolding and you are in it. If you're relating with the heroine, You're feeling like, that butterfly in your stomach, maybe. You're feeling love. And if something wrong happens, you feel angry, just like the heroine is feeling. So you're feeling all those emotions and you're in that story. And then your phone rings and you become aware that you were witnessing it. You lose the connection. You can still witness it. You can see it that the heroine is crying, she's happy, she's dancing and all of that. But now there is a space between that screen and you. You got in your seat. And from there, you can make the choice. Do I want to go into that story again? Do I want to live that movie, experience the emotion that is happening? Or do I want to pay attention to something else? For example, my phone. For example, my partner who was sitting beside me and chat with that partner. So, to like relate that metaphor with your internal world. So, whenever something happens, there is a story that is going on in your head, that this is bad, this should not have happened, why this happens to me. And there are those accompanying emotion, the way you experience life, the colors of life. And when something happens, it is natural that you are in it, you are living the story and you are feeling those emotions. The skill of non attachment happens when you see that you are in the story, that this is happening, that you are hooked by that story, that you're living that story. And then you step back and inside once you become aware that this was a story going on, because you are not aware usually, you are in it, you are feeding it, you are remembering memories from the past, you are making predictions to the future that what will happen, and that's why the emotions are also becoming louder. So once you notice that there was a story going on, there are these emotions, you step back. It naturally happens. You don't have to do it. You can also do it visually. But yeah, it automatically happens that there's a space between you and the story. And now you're observing the thoughts. Now you're observing the emotions. Okay. From that vantage point, now you have the choice. You have that freedom. That do I want to continue the story? Do I want to live these emotions? If it is a positive situation and you want to, experience that fully, like savor that moment fully, when a butterfly lands on your nose, maybe, and you want to really savor that moment, then you can continue. And if not, if it is not helpful to how you want to live, and that's why it is really important to have that clarity. But if it is not helpful for you, basically, it is not helpful, then you can choose. Okay, I want to switch the story. I want to maybe change the plot of the story. So, since you mentioned toxic positivity, anything and everything that you might have heard in the personal development, growth, self help, all of these kind of fields happens at this point. When you realize that you are triggered, when you realize that you're in that story, you're feeling that emotions, you take a step back, or, a space occurs between you and whatever was happening. And at that moment, you know, you apply a technique. It can be an affirmation that you start to, you realize I was thinking negatively. My coach said that, or my therapist said that, when you have this thought, think this way. Okay. So it can be an affirmation, it can be breathing technique, anything. And then you make the choice. Do I want to replace it with a positive thought? And the mistake people make here is toxic positivity that you mentioned, that they try to deny it. They try to say that everything is going to be okay, and all of those different phrases. But it is important that before you do that, before you reassure yourself, the thing that makes it toxic positivity and not healthy one is that you do not validate whatever is happening here. And validation is for emotions. So you do not validate what your internal experience is in terms of what you're feeling. So you are like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Oh, I'm feeling fear. Let's just replace it. Let's just, try to think positive, positive, positive. But instead, you need to come and you need to see that this is what I'm feeling. And it's okay to feel this way for a moment, to let it be here, to let the emotion be here. I know it might sound crazy to someone who is feeling really overwhelmed. I don't want to experience that. And if it is too overwhelming, of course, apply a technique to regulate yourself. Breathe deeply, maybe take 3 deep breaths or whatever, you need to apply. Once you get regulated, come back to what was happening within you. Because it is not gone. That emotion, that energy is still within your body. And if you do not process it the right way, it is going to stay in some part of your body. It is going to stay as a tension. It is going to stay in some way in your body because it is energy. You haven't released in it what was produced. You need to move it through some way. So validate that. Once we do that, the emotion softens. And again, there is no condition. You do not need to validate it. Again, your mind is going to be very smart. It's going to like, okay, it's okay, anxiety, you can stay here. But just go away really, really quickly. When I have validated you, just go away. So that is pseudo acceptance. That is not going to work. Because working do not mean that you get rid of the emotion. Working means that you were able to be with it, be with whatever was happening, whatever was unfolding. You have that anchor, you have that capacity. You tuned into that state of being, which whose natural quality is peace, whose natural quality is compassion, is wisdom. The the so-called like soul, self, different people refer it in different ways, awareness. You realize that whatever was happening is like a cloud, okay? And you or the awareness is the sky. It is a very common metaphor in mindfulness that you are the sky, you are vast, you would not be affected with whatever is happening, no matter the thought, no matter the intensity of emotion. You cannot be broken, you cannot be affected, no matter what has happened to you. You are not broken if you believe that. There is nothing wrong with you. So, this is the sky. You are the sky, the soul, awareness, spirit. That is the sky, and it can hold, that awareness can hold everything, just like the awareness right now that we practice could hold the sounds here. It could hold the distant sounds. It could hold the sound of the heartbeat, the sound of the breath. It is vast, it is spacious, and it can hold anything. And that is the insight. Right now, I'm saying it. It might be making sense to you. It might not. But once you will have the experience, there would be freedom. You would have this realization that no matter what happens, I would not be harmed and I can hold everything. I have that capacity. So, yeah.
Anisha, that's a very, very powerful metaphor you dropped in for us. And I want to stay with that a bit more. So, when you talked about you being a sky, right? I also see that the emotions are like clouds, they are coming and passing away. To know that, again, the door that you were talking about before, right? The positive and the so called positive and negative emotions, which are all useful in a way. So they're all accessible in the same door and they're all useful in a way to know this. Again, you mentioned that the experience is something that can make you completely believe in it, right? Um, Here I want the listeners to kind of pause and think about this, that it's okay even if you're curious about this when you're hearing about it. So conceptually, maybe you have not yet experienced this and feels like, others can have access to this. I don't know how to access this. But I think even the curiosity that you put in here, that it's accessible to everybody. You all are the sky. That is very powerful.
Yeah, we all are that same sky.
Yes. So I hope that the listeners here, even if conceptually they are trying to get this idea, even to stay with that idea and stay curious around it, how much ever time they need. Again, curiosity is also an emotion to stay, access it within you. it would be a very beautiful place to start with.
Exactly. So the self that I was talking about, the spirit in the sky and everything, different people call it different ways, and everything is welcome. That curiosity, you mentioned the right point, that can be the starting point, and that is another quality of that self or of that awareness. Let's call it awareness for now, because
Mhm.
we kind of understand it. Otherwise, the self and spirit are kind of like um, the non-material, non-conceptual concepts. So that awareness, has all these beautiful qualities. It is, curiosity is one of those qualities. Compassion, um, uh, whatever, peace. Peace is also like a state of being. So I do not see it as an emotion,
Mm.
because again emotions comes and go, but when we say that, you always have access to that peace and that is always there, so it is more of a state of being. Curiosity, peace, compassion, these are kind of state of being rather than emotion that comes, you experience it, or that is there for a certain moment and then it goes away. When all of these different emotions, thought, your internal world starts to settle, and what you experience there is going to be peace, is going to be compassion. And why I say that is because when I like work when I am working on a particular thing with my client and we are going through whatever they are experiencing, and once I bring curiosity, acceptance, then curiosity. So once we accept it and allow it, whatever is happening, and then we become curious about it rather than resisting it, rather than trying to get rid of it, we become curious. And not in terms of like analyzing it so much. It's in terms of like the felt experience. As I said with the sound exercise also, that leave the labels, just become aware of how the sound feels like, like the stab, like how the loudness, that felt sense. So when we become aware of that, and more things, there are always like different things to explore according to different therapeutic approaches. But when we do that, that quality of openness, that quality of compassion, it always, you know, arose in them, and they were like, they started to feel compassion, and it was so beautiful. And I didn't ask them to be, kind or to do all of that stuff, that naturally emerged. And there was this sense of peace, compassion, all of those different wonderful qualities, so that's why I can say that it is there within all of us, and you can access it even through a simple practice.
What you just said also brings to me the fact that, we focus so much on doing. If I do this, I can access peace. And I think when you said that it is a state of being, and how less we emphasize on being in comparison to doing,
Yeah.
that is, uh, peace is accessible in the being and not in the doing as much. I could sense that when you asked how loud is the sound, and the sound around me was really light, right? Kind of, if it was a sensation of touch, I was experiencing the texture, then I'm feeling the texture, and I can feel the quality when I'm accessing a quality of just being. When you are listening to the loudness of the sound or the texture of something, you are in a state of being. And that is the beauty, that is that little moment where you access that peace.
Yeah, exactly. You are here, you're experiencing it, you're aware of it, you are here, and you're feeling this. If you just take your finger and if you just move it around your palm, if you just do that and notice the temperature of it, or maybe it is causing tingling in your palm or in your finger, and if you would just stay with this thing, you would start to feel like you're getting settled, because your attention is no more on the thoughts, but it is here, because your thoughts are usually about the past or the future. And
Yeah.
you don't need thoughts about the present moment unless you are in danger or stuff like that, if you're doing something important, which we are not all the time. We are doing like usual stuff. Up until I mentioned this, you might not have been aware of your feet,
Mm.
and now you are. So you were living here, we were living here. And now we experience our body, which is here all the time, but we are not aware of it. And this, like these simple practices can bring you to this moment. And some people might be like, so should I leave all my work and just so balance is important. And also being and doing are not two distinct things. This was another thing that happened, that at that moment when I said that, I realized peace was accessible. So it is not that when I stop to do these practices, I can access peace when I do that. And it is important to stop at some times and pause and everything. But being and doing can beautifully dance together. For example, the a very famous practice by that same person whose book I was reading was mindfully washing the dishes. So, for example, you're washing your utensils, which I usually do. You are doing that task, and what happens is usually our mind is like going somewhere in the thoughts that, okay, I just need to finish this fast, this fast. I have to do this work, or I have to watch this episode. Whatever was happening in the TV. If you were eating while watching a TV, or you start to plan about something, you start to do all of those different things. But if you just bring your awareness to the task, meaning now you're doing it, you are doing the task, plus you're aware of it. You are also being, you are here in this moment, right here, right now. So you bring your awareness to the plate in front of you. You notice the colors, the light shining on the surface of it. You notice as you are moving your hands, you notice the movement of your hand. If you just do this with your wrist, like move it in this, like in circular motion, you might notice certain like muscles, you might notice certain sensations. So you're washing the dishes, you are noticing those beautiful bubbles, those rainbow, colors forming on the bubbles and stuff like that. And you're noticing the sound when each utensil is put down on another. You feel the water in your hands when you're washing the dishes. So this your simple task can transform into a practice and can transform into a beautiful moment, into a moment where you felt alive, where you were here. So, based on this, I created like two very small courses that they are on the platform on which I'm a teacher, Inside Timer. And so, one course was around how to stop chasing and start living. So, how to, stop striving and start arriving in this that shifts our mindset a little bit. And the next thing was I created another course including all these different ways, like this one that I mentioned, washing the dishes. It is a very famous practice by Thich Nhat Hanh. I try to include the elements that can help you feel joy, peace, and that sense of awe when you are witnessing something beautiful. How you can do that while you're going through your life right now, while you're sitting here and I'm talking to you, how you can feel that joy in the same home, in the same routine every single day through the same path, whether it is in your home, outside. You can really experience it. Again, not conceptual, experience it, how you can do it, how you can access that peace that we're talking about right now, right here, without changing anything.
Anisha, I want to again stop and pick on this word sense of awe that you talked about. And I personally also feel, wonder is something that we kind of let go of as we are growing up. As a child, it's filled in you. And I think that is why peace is more accessible to a child while they are doing. And like you said, it's a dance of doing and being is for them very much in the moment, right? They are on their heads, still they are completely being in that moment. And I experience this myself. So I live in this beautiful island very close to nature on a daily basis. I went to see a sunrise with a friend who was visiting me, and it was early morning, so everything was just waking up. Everybody's slow, everything's waking up. And At the ocean, the tide was a bit lower. So the water where we were standing was very low. Like there was hardly any water. We could stand easily. And suddenly, there were so many things coming alive in front of us. Like suddenly, a shell started moving. There was a crab inside. What we thought it was a rope, it was not. It was a sea cucumber. And just in that small space where there was less water, we saw sea creatures I hadn't seen in my 14, 15 years of living here. And I will never forget the sense of wonder I felt. And I could access peace in, even now when I'm talking to you about it, I'm able to access that peace, of just seeing life. It was so beautiful. It's like we were talking about, you need to experience these things to actually feel the real feeling. But then that's always around us, that is always accessible to us. We choose not to look at it. A child usually does.
Yeah. I remember like when I was a little girl, and I think you might also might be able to relate. So you might have observed like a little ant going and you followed it. Like where is it going? You were curious, you were there, you were noticing the ant, you were noticing the interaction between them and what it is carrying, the tiny teeth and everything. And you were there and you were like, wow. And you were like, let's follow where it is going. And you were there, like you're going with it. And yeah, so the ant is still there. Maybe you have concrete houses and stuff like that. But right now, like I think few hours ago, I went to my terrace and I just sat there and I noticed that little ant and I was like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to that. So I was like on my phone checking my notification. I put it down after and I was like, let's just be with that for a while. I just observe it for 2 minutes and I already start to feel like more connected. And it was a very, very simple thing. And you might be like, I do not have nature around me like you have, around the beach and everything. Or even, I do not even have the ants and stuff like that. You are not disconnected with nature. You might think so, but you are not. In this very object, like I have this wooden table on which all this is set up. So if you just observe what is around you, and if you just, even reflect that how did this thing come into existence, you would find a natural source for it. And it would be again a moment of awe. It came from there and how it was processed and how it is a part of your life. So it is there. Maybe you don't see it, but it is. And all you have to do is to simply notice. That's all you need. Nothing else. Just notice. It is here. The peace is here. The happiness is here. The abundance is here.
Anisha, I want to bring in here one more point, and I would love to know your thoughts on this also. As we are talking about wonder and things being accessible to us at all given points, I think pause is also something that we don't talk about many times because we are moving from one task to another, one meeting to another, one appointment to another. How important is pause, to actually start noticing?
The simple answer that yes, it is, without it, you cannot do that. You need a moment like between tasks. So if I'm recording this with you right now, and once we are done, I close my laptop and I, you know, go to the next thing, then the meaning is also kind of lost. For example, if I switch off this task and if I move to the next task, which might be dinner given the time, then I can just simply reflect that how do I want to be as I do that next task? Do I want to feel connected with my family as I'm eating dinner? Do I want to enjoy TV? So I'm going to choose a feel good kind of thing to watch maybe. Or do I want to eat mindfully and I can like sit in silence and do that? Or like What is my intention? How do I want to be in that next moment of my day? And this brings like conscious living, what we call intentional living, conscious living. So if you want to live that way,
Yeah.
if you want to live mindfully, consciously, intentionally, in aligned manner, basically if you want to change the way you live into something else, you need that pause so that you can make a make an intentional choice of what I want. And one practice that I have for the pause thing um is that every time I am going to come out of my washroom, okay, I pause and I either take a deep breath or I focus on my breath naturally. It depends, whatever I feel like. So I pause for just a breath or for just 3 breaths, not a long time, maybe 5 seconds even, and then continue. And what happens is when I do that, I notice that there is like my body is tense. So if I ask you that right now, Roshni, or anyone who is listening right now, just pause and notice, scan your body from head to toe, like very slowly. So bring your attention to your head, notice the muscles of your face. You don't have to do anything, simply notice. Notice your shoulders, your whole hands, your neck, your chest, your abdomen, your whole back, your pelvic area, and your legs, all the way down to your toes. And now you can open your eyes if your eyes were closed. So basically, I didn't ask you to change anything, but once you notice, you might have noticed two things. First, that there was tension in your body. No matter what you are doing, even if you're sitting like this and we are talking, there must be tension in some part of your body. The muscle might be tight in some part. And when you do this, I didn't ask you to relax or do something, but when you just brought your attention, the muscle relaxed on its own. And that's what happens, with that single pause. And now you might like, can you see a difference in your internal state compared to before we did it?
Yeah. And instead of talking about pause, we actually took a pause. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's the effect. I cannot say it in words, but you might have experienced it.
So, Anisha, we talked about thoughts and emotions, and we talked about how body plays an important part also. I want to come to this point where the mind is full of self doubt and guilt about past choices many a times. How can people start beginning to make peace with themselves?
The single word that is coming to me is acceptance. It might be easy, it might be hard depending on the situation, depending on, what you're trying to accept. But the real rational choice, we are not all the time logical and rational as human beings, but maybe it might help to remind ourselves that the real rational choice about it is simply acceptance that this happened. Yes, I don't like it, I didn't like it, and I feel guilty about it. And also accepting that guilt is present in me right now, and it's okay. Sometimes I ask my clients to talk to their emotions, that, just notice where the guilt is present and let it know that it's okay, that you can be here. Again, so you do not want to get rid of the unpleasant emotion or the unpleasant thought, but allow it that, okay, in this moment, I'm having the thought that I'm a bad person in relation to guilt, or in this moment, I am having this feeling of guilt, and stay with the emotion. Stay with it. Another thing, a component that comes is compassion. So once you accept it, once you allow that emotion, then compassion, that would I say these things that I'm saying right now to a friend of mine? It is a very simple question, but it might change, the perspective that it is not really helpful. It is simply hurtful, to say that
Yeah.
you are so lazy, you are so unproductive, you would never do anything in your life and all of that. I understand. I very well understand self criticism. I used to say that I am my worst critic. No one can say anything hurtful in a way that I say to myself. So I get that. And the compassion is the best antidote to self criticism, to shaming yourself, because all you need to do is that simple question that would I say this to my best friend? Would I say this to someone I love? And if not, then why are you saying this to yourself? It is not going to help, it is going to hurt. So, the best antidote to guilt or shame is compassion. And it's not about excusing your behavior in any manner. So we
Yeah.
accept that this happened. We accept that there is guilt. We give compassion to ourselves. What can I do now, to help
Yeah.
correct this mistake, to move from a space of, you know, not from guilt, but from love, so that we can correct that mistake, take those actions. It is not passive, it is active. Take those actions to correct it or to do something that you can do right now. And not let that energy be or that attention be consumed by that guilt. Because usually we go down cycle when we are in guilt. We do not take action. We are like, oh, I want to close down, we are in that kind of space. So
Yeah. Now that we have touched about, feeling guilty about the past, I also want to touch the part where letting go and moving forward, where letting go becomes a very important part of pausing enough to access the peace, right? The inner peace that we are talking about. How can someone release the need to control outcomes, especially if they struggle with perfectionism?
I think it goes a little bit deeper and more personalized to that person, because behind perfectionism, there is some limiting belief that if I don't do this, then like this would mean this about me, that I'm not good enough, that I'm unworthy, like there is always some deeper belief behind that perfectionism. So I'm thinking of like more of a general answer, but like letting go of the control happens when we realize that we don't have any control. We don't really. If right now, the light goes off, my whole setup fall apart. If internet goes off and I'm not able to continue the stock, I don't have control no matter how much I gave this time. If I, took 1 hour to set this whole up, to set my sound, to set the lighting and everything, and it can go away like this. So you don't really have control. And to that perfectionist, it might be like, it might induce fear, but that is the truth. And what we need to ask ourselves is that I'm just trying to remember a time when the perfectionism got in my way. It was in terms of when I'm creating content, like I put out meditations and tracks. So when I tried, I decided to create my very first meditation on Insight Timer 3 years ago around. I was like, what if they don't like it? What if people don't like my voice? So this is a very interesting fact that I used to hate my voice. Yeah, so you see like how your mind tries to convince you. You can change, you can accept the things that you do not like about yourself. And those are like not really bad, but society tells you that this is bad.
There was this movie I remember in the early 2000s, I think. I'm not sure if you've watched it, called The Peaceful Warrior. It was about a gymnast who is obsessed with outcomes and achievements, and then he meets this mysterious mentor named Socrates, who teaches him that, you know, the real strength and fulfillment comes not from the trophies, but from living completely in the present moment. It was a movie that really stuck with me. It was beautiful. Like, there is a scene where he actually uh, asks him to pause, and then he suddenly notices and hears a butterfly wing flap, and those were very beautiful scenes. If you have not watched it, maybe it's a movie I would love to recommend. um
Sure.
there is a line in that movie where the mentor says that there is never nothing going on. There are no ordinary moments, you know, that how can we bring that awareness into our everyday life so that we nurture the inner calm and presence?
Mhm. It feels like a whole circle here because we went back, we go back to that practice that I did with the sounds, that we did together. So it was here. And what might have happened, I haven't watched the movie, but based on what you described and based on what the mentor says, that fulfillment is here, or peace is here, whatever you want is here. So what might have happened is that they might have slowed things down in that scene, and they might have, the colors of that butterfly might have popped up, or the sounds of the flapping wings, the people may be cheering, you might hear the sounds, you might hear the visuals really bright, you know, and that is what the experience is like when you are doing it here, like in your real life as well. So the sounds were around you. We just tapped into one particular sense where the sounds were around you. But when you just come here, like arrived in this moment without thinking about anything else, without thinking about the next question, without thinking about what else to say, when you arrived here, you noticed that sound in your heart. And you mentioned that it got louder, right? So
Yeah.
it was exact. So we didn't focus on the whole of the scene, but just focused on one element. And that is what happened. The movie scene happened in your real life. And it might have happened to anyone who did the practice with us.
Yeah.
So nothing to do. You have to do, you have to do just that. I gave you everything here. It's not that I'm holding any secret or anything that you cannot do. We did the practice, and you can do it with anything, everything, everywhere. It
Yeah.
is like that. So just pause and listen, or arrive, or become aware.
And we talked about this when we began the conversation also, that it is one thing to actually notice these moments in kind of a slow motion or more profoundly, but keeping that sense of peace in our daily life also takes practice, and we have talked about it. But a lot of people think inner peace is a place you reach at some point. How do we kind of, um if I could say, even with practice, it's kind of easy to lose the calm and feel tense again. How can someone respond to setbacks without losing faith in the process?
Um, so when I'm guiding a meditation, what I do is that I remind it in between, whatever we are focusing on, your mind is going to wander, because it is its nature. So again, we need to accept that your mind will wander, your mind will go into thoughts, your mind will get towards distraction and all of that, just like in your life. That you need to accept that there are going to be setbacks, there are going to be, moments of disappointment, there are going to be moments when you doubt that can you even do this practice on a daily basis, or stuff like that. So before you try any change, just first of all set that expectation, yeah, expectation that there are going to be setbacks, that I am going to fumble in a podcast. So there are going to be some things that goes wrong. Um, so accept that first of all, and because it is the natural process, nothing just goes up, right? Um, and then realize that that is the practice. The
Mm,
practice is not to focus on the breath as we do in the meditation. The practice is to come back to the moment again, to come back to the breath. You
mm,
know, Similarly, to come back if you feel disappointed, if you're not able to focus on a particular day, if you're not able to feel calm when you practice that, So anytime you practice, mindfulness, anytime you practice any meditation or any practice for that matter, especially in terms of mindfulness, the goal is not to feel peaceful, the goal is not to feel good. Because if you set these goals, you are again using it to achieve something, right? You're using this to achieve something. The goal is to simply arrive here in this moment and meet whatever is happening right now. It can be an unpleasant experience, it can be a pleasant experience. But the skill here is not to achieve peace or have to cultivate it to know how to access it, but to arrive in this moment, to live your life right now, to experience what your life feels like in this particular moment, and in this moment, and in this moment, and in this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if you lose the track of the practice, if you're not able to, if you do not feel good, you practice today, but you do not felt the peace, or maybe if you miss the practice for a week, something happened, if you simply forget, whatever it is, come back, come back and practice that again. You will, and you will learn that skill to come back to this present moment. And it will come in handy when you are going through a difficult situation. You cannot think of using it while you are in a difficult situation. You have to practice it regularly. And then it will come, it will be useful.
And when you said about this, I remember 10 years back, I found meditation very difficult to do because I thought meditation means emptying your mind. Absolute silence should be there, and I can never do that. And until somebody taught me that, no, it's about coming back, what you were saying, coming back to this moment. If I thought, I started thinking about other things, the moment I realized, oh, I'm thinking about something else now, to come back to my breath or come back to this moment. That is when it changed, for me. Meditation felt, and I have heard this from a lot of people, they don't go into meditation because they feel they can't silence their mind.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know that myth. I also fall into that particular myth. Maybe more so, it was it was one myth, but the more dominant one for me was that I am practicing mindfulness or I'm practicing, sorry, meditation to, to experience, to feel good, to feel peace, to feel all of those different good things. And it's not about that. It's coming in the moment, meeting whatever is present. And the thing that you mentioned that changed things for you is like, so when you come back, why people say that is the practice is because you got lost in your thoughts, you become one with your thoughts, you got identified with them, you got lost in that story. Remember the movie, right? And then you remembered that was the moment of awareness. That was the moment when you were in touch with that awareness, you got a taste of it, you touched it, and then you come back to that practice to notice it, to stay with the moment because your breath helps you stay here. You got lost. Again, a moment of awareness arise. Oh, I lost, I got lost in it. And this is going to help you in your life, like real life, So when you are in the story, you are feeding that story. You are in the situation, you got triggered, you are thinking, oh, what if this happens? What if that and that and that? And then a moment comes. I'm thinking, I'm in the story. That is the moment of awareness. And that now you have the choice. Do I want to come back to the breath? Do I want to focus on something or go with the story, continue with the thoughts? That's how meditation becomes beneficial in your real life.
Yeah. And now, coming to the final part, if someone listening today feels stuck, anxious, or very far away from peace, what is one step or one question they can ask themselves, or a step they can, gently take right now?
That is a nice question. Hmm. Um, Although it is difficult to answer. So, a simple thing that they can do is in their day, as they are going about their day, they can choose either an activity or they can set an alarm, you know, I prefer an activity rather than an alarm. So they can choose an activity with which they can pair this practice. For example, your activity is before you go to bed. So whenever you can do it, just choose one activity like that, which you do daily, and you have the time to pause. So we discussed the importance of pause, and that is where things start. So pause for 5 seconds, maybe start very small. And in that moment, simply ask yourself what I am aware of in this moment. So ask yourself, where is my attention right now? And if your attention is on something, you are aware of something that is causing you distress, that is causing you anxiety and all of that, then choose your attention, like, place your attention on something else that will bring you peace in that moment. It can be something that is present here. It can be like a breath, just notice 3 breaths. It can be, noticing your feet on the ground. So it can be something like pause, ask yourself where your attention is at this moment, what you are aware of right now. And then if that is causing you distress, then choose where can I put my attention or what else can I become aware of that will make me feel a little bit peaceful, that would help me access the peace that is available here. Yeah. So that is my little practice.
Thank you for sharing that, Anisha. So, Anisha, I wanted to ask you as we are closing today's session, that what are your thoughts around letting go? We did talk about it briefly, but letting go in terms of peace. What are your final thoughts around letting go?
Okay. What we need to let go of is, in fact, control, actually, because we have this expectation or like this rule, or, you know, we have a should in our mind, meaning that this situation shouldn't be this way, that I should not feel this way. So we have like all these different ways of trying to resist what is happening and to control it in a manner that it serves us. It serves that me, the person that we refer to as me. And I know your mind is trying to help you, you know. Sometimes maybe it does too much, try to help you, and that causes the problem. So, yeah, so a simple way can be to acknowledge that thank you, mind. Thank you for trying to control the situation, control the way how I feel. I understand that you're trying to help me, but we cannot control all of this.
Yeah.
I do not want to put that kind of a pressure on you, my dear mind. I do not want you to, try to figure out, make all these predictions of what will happen, how to correct it. I do not need to put all that pressure on you to have those all permanent permutation and combination in your head to figure out how you can serve me. You can relax right now. You can relax. It's okay. I'm thankful for what you are doing for me. And in this moment, I choose to meet whatever is happening right now. It's okay. I can be with that, whatever is happening. Just trust me.
I'm so glad we are ending this note on a note of gratitude, to our mind. When we were talking about inner peace, I think that becomes a very important part of peace, a sense of gratitude. A heartfelt
Exactly.
thank you, Anisha, for talking about and sharing such great insights about such an important aspect of our lives with us today. Your reflections remind us that inner peace is not really a distant destination, but a practice that we can cultivate every day through all the things you mentioned through the episode, but most importantly, through self awareness, compassion, and mindfulness, just being present, what you were talking about, arriving in this moment. Thank you very much.
And thank you. You asked all these beautiful questions. And I was like, what are you going to ask about peace? And then we went on and covered every single, all these different aspects. So it is your talent to be able to pull all of this out from the person in front of you. Like, I love the way you formed the questions, how your mind went here and there and here and picked everything and just put it into a very valuable package of this episode. So
Thank you. Thank you. So, dear listeners, we want to remind you that today's conversation has more meaning when you're able to pause and reflect on how it can be useful to you in your life. This episode was kind of an invitation to explore the strength within yourself, a strength that each of us hold. And like Anisha was saying, you are the sky. And if you desire peace within yourself, the answers are not outside of you. It's accessible to each one of us. Remember that the journey begins within. And we would like you to take a moment and reflect on these questions for this moment. How does your body feel when you're stressed versus when you feel calm? What is one thing in your life you're holding on to too tightly? How would your life change if you let go? And what is one small act you could do today to nurture inner peace? Thank you for joining us on this inner journey of peace today. I wish that your days are filled with presence, self compassion, and inner calm. Until the next episode, it is goodbye from me, your host Rosh. Stay connected, stay curious.